All right, so we just learned about tone. So we need to figure out the difference between tone and mood, and we need to figure out how they are connected. So that is what we're going to do in these next few slides. We're going to talk about mood, and we're going to talk about how it is connected with the tone and how it can be the same as the tone possibly, but very often it's different from the tone. So when we were talking about tone, we were talking about the writer. We talked a lot about how a writer uses words that give you the impression of what his or her attitude is. And it all comes from the writer. The tone is put on paper in words by the writer. Well, mood's a little different. Mood is the feeling or emotion of the reader. What you are feeling while you're reading is the mood of a passage. It's what you are feeling. It's not what you're interpreting about what the writer is trying to say. It is what you are actually feeling. So if we read the passage again, in the living room, the voice sang, tick tock, 7 o'clock, time to get up, time to get up, 7 o'clock, as if it were afraid that nobody would. I'm thinking that the clock sang, and anytime I hear sang, I think I like songs, and when someone sings, I enjoy listening. I'm also thinking that poor clock. It's afraid it is singing to nobody. That poor clock. It's repeating itself and it's singing over and over, but it's afraid that no one is there to hear it. How do you feel about that clock? You can answer that, and when you do, you are identifying the mood of a passage. The author used the verb sang and the adjective afraid. He used an exclamation point. That makes me gasp. It makes me nervous. He gave the clock human traits, and he stated that the clock sang and was afraid. You could say that you have a really positive mood because when you hear the word sang, it makes you think positive thoughts. If someone's sang, you usually think positive things. You could say that your mood is a little bit negative because when you hear the word afraid, it makes you think of negative thoughts. So anytime we read something, especially in fiction, we want to play a little game called Name That Mood. How do I feel while I'm reading this? And based on the passage we just read, we can play What is your mood? How do you as the reader feel about this passage? We can use charts. We can use lots of adjectives that are in our brains to find an emotion or how you may feel about a passage. It was a little short passage, and I know it's hard to get a really good mood about something with just a couple of sentences. But if you really look into it and you try to come up with a mood, could you possibly say that you're a little bit curious about what's going on? Why does the clock feel afraid? Why is the clock repeating itself? It gives me two moods. It makes me think about being possibly a little worried that something strange is going on. And when something is strange is going on, I have a mood of being a little bit curious. I usually am going to ask questions. What's going on? Why is the clock afraid? So, going back and thinking about that sentence that we read, and going back and thinking about the names of the moods, you might want to go back and review those really quickly. And adjectives and emotions and things that you feel. You feel happy, you feel sad, you feel afraid, you feel excited, you feel hungry, you feel angry. There are so many words you can use to describe how you feel in your emotions. And anytime you're reading, you want to be able to do that. Let's practice. Let's practice looking at a few passages and see if we can kind of figure out what the mood may be of those passages as they were written by the author. We're the reader. We're going to decide what mood that writing puts us in. All right, so you took a quick quiz. It was just 3 little questions. You read the little passages, and I'm curious to know if you were able to figure out what mood you might be in after reading those passages. These are pretty much based on how you think. You and I may have a completely different mood, and we might be able to argue that. We're going to do something with that in the last activity for the week. But on the 3 passages that you worked on, I just wanted to go back and review with you how you could see a certain mood based on what the writer wrote. So I want you to go to the next slide. Okay, so on the quiz, the first passage you saw said the morning house lay empty. The clock ticked on, repeating and repeating. It sounds into the emptiness. 7, 9, breakfast time. 7, 9. Okay, so the author presented an empty house, but something just kept making a noise. When he wrote repeating and repeating, does that make you think he has a negative attitude? It seems so. He also stated that the clock ticked on into the emptiness. The feeling I got about being in that house lets me know that the mood of the story may very well be anxious. The house has this sound that just keeps going on, but that sound doesn't have a purpose. And the house is actually trying to make sense of it all if you gather what the author is writing in that way. So one of the words may be anxious. If something feels empty, but something keeps happening and happening, and you walk into that environment and you hear something happening and happening, the first thing you're going to do is look around to see why that noise is happening. It's going to make you feel nervous. It's going to make you feel anxious. So anxious could very well be a mood that this passage gives us. It makes us feel nervous. In the second sentence that you were given, the passage reads, outside, the garage chimed and lifted its door to reveal the waiting car. After a long wait, the door swung down again. Okay, so it seems here that the author presents a garage as being scheduled. Someone scheduled that garage to chime this really nice sound. And then it just waits and it reveals a waiting car. Well, we all know that if a garage door goes up, a car usually is cranked and either comes in or goes out. But it says on this day, there was a long, long wait, and then the door swung down again. It seemed that the author wrote that the car was waiting and the garage door chimed and lifted. Just as someone opens a door when someone visits, you know that feeling. You're excited if something chimes and you open the door and there is a visitor. But then it waited and nothing happened. As a reader, I wanted something or someone to go through that door. You may feel a very disappointed mood. No one came in, no one went out. No car came in, no car came out. We should have a pretty disappointed mood after reading that passage. The third passage states that it quivered at each sound, the house did. If a sparrow brushed against a window, the shade snapped up. The birds, startled, flew off. No, not even a bird must touch the house. The author is writing about the house with words that showed the house was defenseless. He stated that the house quivered. He stated that the shade snapped. He even made a statement that not even a bird must touch that house. The author is presenting an attitude of defensiveness. How do you feel about the house as a reader? The mood the author is setting could make you feel scared. And it's not the mood, remember, that the author sets. He writes with a tone, but with his words, he is creating this mood for the reader to feel scared. Remember, mood is decided by you, the reader. Okay, so I think we've gone over mood enough that hopefully you have a little better understanding that the mood is the feelings that a reader has when they are reading a passage. It's the emotions that they have. So you might be reading a story that's so romantic. That's the mood. That's the mood you have. That's what you're feeling. Those are the emotions that you're feeling when you're reading. You might be reading something that's really awesome or really gruesome, and you might be saying, oh, this is so sick. It might be awesome. That's a mood. That's your emotion. You're describing how you feel and what the passage you are reading does for your emotions and your feelings. I hope you understand this a little bit better. Now, we're going to move into reading a passage and listening to it. And I hope you're able to enjoy it as you just read it. No questions will be asked as you're reading it. You're just going to go through and read it and listen to it. But the last activity you have for the week is you're going to pick a couple of parts from that passage and you're going to go and you are going to write down the tone and the moods that you identified as you listen to the short story. Okay, good luck. Enjoy the story.